good opportunity to do that. So I would like, if you wouldn't mind, to open from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 16. This is the tough one. It's the parable of the unjust steward. I've been doing a liturgy on Saturdays, and so we read the Gospel of like the saint of the day. That's how the church has it set up. It's not like a Sunday Gospel. You read the Gospel of the saint of the day. So potentially you could be reading the same Gospel a lot. And for some of the saints where there's someone that gives up like a lot of what they have, or gives to the poor or something like that, they'll put it in for that saint, the parable of the unjust steward. And so I've had to give sermons, because we just give like little sermons, during Saturday. And the parable of the unjust steward is very hard, and so I kind of just had to start looking into it and reading about it and see what's going on here, because one of the only parables that's not clear on its face, that isn't also explained later. So let's read it together and see what we got here. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. He also said to his disciples, "There was a certain rich man who had a steward, and an accusation was brought to him that this man was wasting his goods. So he called him and said to him, 'What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your stewardship, for you can no longer be steward.'" So, sort of summarizing, the master brought in his steward and said, "There's been an accusation made against you that you're wasting my goods." Okay? So he said, I need you to have me give an account of what you're doing. Basically, he's going to get rid of him. Then the steward said within himself, "What shall I do? For my master is taking the stewardship away from me. I cannot dig, I am ashamed to beg. I have resolved what to do, that when I am put out of the stewardship, they may receive me into their houses." So he called every one of his master's debtors to him and said to the first, "How much do you owe my master?" And he said, 100 measures of oil. So he said to him, "Take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to the other, "And how much do you owe?" He said, 100 measures of wheat. And he said to him, "Take your bill and write 80. So the master commended the unjust steward, because he had dealt shrewdly. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in their generation than the sons of light. And I say to you, make friends for yourselves by unrighteous mammon, that when you fail, they may receive you into an everlasting home." I'll just continue, just because this is a nice verse. "He who is faithful in what is least is faithful also in much. He who is unjust in what is least is unjust also in much. Therefore, if you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit your trust to the true riches? And you have not been faithful in what is another man's, who will give you what is your own?" And glory be to God forever. So, what do you guys think? What is this about? What is he talking about? Have you guys heard this parable before? Keith, what do you think? You know its meaning? It's a hard one, right? I think it's by far the hardest parable, because it's not so clear. Like we have the parable Messiaen of the prodigal son. It's a story, but it's clear what it means. Even the parable of the sower and the seeds, even if it's not so clear what's happening in every seed, Christ explains it directly to the disciples. And here also, usually when we're talking about like a master and a servant, you can kind of plug in like God is the master, or the human is the servant, something like that. But also here it's not so clear also, because the master doesn't do anything that would equate him with God necessarily. And I thought this was a good subject for like a young professionals meeting, because you two are, I'm assuming, young professionals. So you have an opportunity now to use your talents for something good. The point of this parable is a very sort of tricky thing, and many people have explained it in many different ways. The one I like the best, the explanation I like the best, because I think it applies to like the way that I would think, is this idea that the steward had control over his master's finances, his money. He did what needed to be done for the master. and he had all the authority over the master's debts. So that's why when he was about to be fired, he went and he told his master's debtors, "Come, how much do you owe my master?" They said, one said 100 measures of oil. And he said, "Okay, take your paper and write 50. He has all the right to do that because he is control of the debts. And it's his right. It's not his money, but it's his right. The same thing for the next person, owed 100 measures of wheat. He said, "Come, how much do you owe? 100 measures of wheat." Say, cross that out and write 80. So what happens when he does that for those people? What are they going to do? That person that owes the master 100 measures but now owes him 50. He's going to look at the servant and say, the steward is going to say, "You're a very nice guy, and you did me a big favor." And he's also going to look at the master and say, "You're a very nice guy," because he thinks that, that's the master putting the steward in charge of this, so the master must have given them this authority. The same thing for the other person. He's going to look at the steward and say, "You did me a big favor." And he's going to look at the master and he's going to say, "This master is loving and kind and forgiving." Now we think of it in terms of our own lives. And like I said, as we start to succeed in our lives, as we attain knowledge and get better jobs and get more money, we sometimes start, come on, don't be scared, there's diknistek. And we start to, well, let's start here. I went to law school, and in law school, I was always told that there was going to be a lot of competition, and people were always going to be competing and mad at each other and stuff. I didn't really talk to anyone, so I don't know how it was, but there was this idea that if you knew something, you wouldn't tell your neighbor. You want to get the leg up. So in law school, they teach you a bunch of stuff, and then they test you on a bunch of different stuff. And the wise people knew what book to get or what study guide to go by to give them kind of a leg up. And so there were people that if they had this study guide and this leg up, they wouldn't necessarily share it with everybody else because it's on a curve, so they kind of put you in a competition between one another. And someone that was smart, maybe I knew this really smart guy in law school. He was actually nice because he was Christian. I like Christians, and all Christians, there's just something about them that's they just have something within them. So he was a very sweet guy, and he helped me and stuff. But there were other guys and girls that they just weren't nice. They didn't want to share their knowledge. They didn't want to share what they learned. They didn't want to share what they got. I remember a couple of months ago, a guy came up to me and said, people always want me to help them because they think I'm smart, and I'm like, I don't have time for this. I have my own stuff to study for. And I was like, that's a good point. You do have, a lot of stuff to do. I understand. But we kind of get this feeling sometimes that we're in control of our own smartness, as if it's something that I did for myself, or if it's something that wasn't given to me, or someone that's very attractive and walks around like they own the place, as if they did something for this attractiveness. If you think about it, our money, our success, our smarts, our looks, our talents, all of that stuff is God-given, is not ours. We come into the world without anything, and we get a lot of stuff while we're in it, and then we leave the world without any of it. St. Paul said that. And he said, you come in the world with nothing, and you leave with nothing. So we sometimes take for granted our education. That's a big one. We live in Southern California, and so we take for granted that we have access to education, access to health, access to jobs, access to food. And we sort of get really proud of ourselves if we go to school and learn a lot and do well and have good jobs and make a lot of money, and it's as if this is mine now. This is something that I've gotten. So the parable of the unjust steward sort of stops us in our tracks for a second, and then you think about it. The unjust steward had control over his master's money. He could do with it what he wanted. But he could use it also for his advantage if he wanted. And the best way to use it for his advantage was not to use it to like buy stuff. It was to gain favor with other people. Because in this situation, there was a debt owed to his master. He couldn't make any money off of that unless like he sold or bought the debt for cheaper or something like that and then fixed it with his master. That's a complicated economics thing for another lesson, another place. But otherwise what was happening is that what he could gain out of having control over his master's debts was that the people could appreciate what he did for them. And so he used it. So we now, as young professionals, eventually are going to start making some money, if not already. And now we have control over some money that we didn't do anything for. You think you did, and for good reason, and you did, but most of what it was you were born into a family that was able to be here in the States and give you access to education and sometimes paid for it, or you had government loans that could pay for it for now. Everything that you have has been given to you. All you had to do is, and again, I'm sure, I don't know you guys that well, but I'm sure you guys are very smart in here. You did a lot of hard work. But I'm trying to think like kind of like outside this. You talk about you had to go to class. You had to study for the exams, right? You had to, show up to work, like with your full set of mind ready to go. You had to do the homework when it was assigned. That's why, like I was more of like a B- student because I just didn't want to do anything. I was very lazy. Kind of like when they asked me to talk here, and I thought of this like a couple minutes ago, like on the right here. Like I continue to do this kind of thing on a daily basis. But don't take my example. But so in our schools, if we put in the work and we put in the time, we can do it. We pass and we get good grades. If you want to be a doctor, Mesanan, you go and you work really hard, but you use your brain that's God-given, and you use your wisdom that's God-given to like do the homework when you're assigned, and to go to class on time and do all those things. And then you get what you receive from that, from your effort. But the mind, given. The wisdom, given. The background of parents pushing you to keep going when you don't want to do anything anymore, given. You didn't do any of that. This is like totally like anti like American thought of like, everybody did a really good job and everybody's like the master of their own domain. That's not really how it works. We're given everything. So then you make some money. You finally become a doctor. You work really hard and you make some money. And so that money, minfin, it's given. It's not yours. It's not yours because if, like, let's say if you go into like a 7-Eleven down the street and you go and you pick up like an iced tea, you can hold it, you can look at it, and you can walk around with it even, right? But can you leave with it without paying for it? You can't. Just like in this world, we have money, we can hold it, we can put it in our pockets, we can put it in our bank accounts, we could keep it for years and years and years and years, but we can't leave with it. Like it's not ours. In the end, it's not ours. So this is the idea of the parable that we have money, and it's not ours. We can use it, we can play with it, we can throw it down, you can rip it up, you can light it on fire, you can pay someone something for it, you can buy stuff with it, but in the end, you can't take it with you. So the idea of the unjust steward is to, why don't I use this thing that's not mine, that I have control over, and give it to someone else, and gain favor with others? So if for instance, I had $10, and I'm walking across the street and it falls out of my pocket. It's gone forever, right? I get nothing from that. Or I buy a $10 coffee from Starbucks and I stay up all night because like I'm not used to caffeine. And so it just makes me miserable. Or I could walk by and see someone that's like sitting in the street and give him the $10. My use of the $10, if I lost it, would be nothing. If I paid for a drink, I would have enjoyed it for a few seconds, and then that's it, and then stayed up all night. I would have remembered that I drank the coffee, but I was talking to on the way here. Apparently, not everybody is like if I drink a coffee like after 3 o'clock, I would be like, I'd never sleep again, but I guess that you can drink enough to get over that. But, so, how about we make this commitment then? No longer taking pride in like what we have that's been given to us, but instead using it and giving it to others So let's say God gives you a great brain, and you can do something really well with your mind, and you're a really good student, and you're really studious, or you're really, really smart. You can use it for yourself and make more money, and that's fine, but you could also use it to help others. What you do or what you use to help others is something that lasts past this life. And if I make $100,000, I can either use it during this life or leave it here after I pass, but it doesn't last forever, because we don't get put in line based on how much money we made in our lives when we go up to heaven. But if I gave that $100,000 to someone, I'm not telling you guys to like give up all your money, and you can if you want, but most people, you don't have to go that far. But if theoretically I gave $100,000 to someone, that action lasts forever. That action means more, because that action will never be forgotten. That action actually works for the afterlife. It's not just something that I threw away here. I threw it away here and gained it up there. If, for instance, you're, like I said, you're really smart and you help others in their studies, you take from your time and give it to someone else, that's an action that lasts forever. Even if you study and you become a doctor, that action of studying gets you to be a doctor. But that being a doctor doesn't last forever, because there's no need for doctors in heaven. There's no reason for lawyers, thank God. There's no reason for engineers anymore. Everything is already done for. Everything is finished. But if you use your talent and give it to someone and help someone, that action lasts forever. That action is what sticks. So the unjust steward was even commended by his master by the end, because he realized that I have power over this money now. I'm going to use it to help me for the future. Because that guy that I saved 50 pounds of wheat or 80 pounds of oil, he's going to let me stay at his house after, when I lose my job. He's going to appreciate the deed that I did for him after I get fired. So it's the same thing here. If you give up what you think is yours, realizing that it's not yours, you get a bigger value from it by the end. Because it's something that's based on two things. First of all, it's based on love, because you wouldn't do that if you didn't love, because that's still a hard thing to do. And more so than that, it's based on faith. For you're showing two things. You're showing love for your neighbors and faith in God. Not faith that you're going to be rewarded for it anyway, so you can just get rid of it, but faith that God remembers the actions that we do and that they're worth something. They're worth something in his eyes. I think wasn't there. It's always hard to bring someone from your own church when you go to talk. It's way easier if like no one's heard you before, because you could just like say whatever and no one remembers. You've never said it before. But this is a story I don't think you've heard either. Maybe. A couple of weeks ago, I was getting something from CVS, and there was this guy that he had his car, and he had his like wife in his car, and it totally looked like his tire was like flat. I don't know how they did that. And he came up to me and he was like, "Hey, Father, how you doing, Father? We're just struggling right now. Our tire's messed up, and we live back here behind the bushes here." He was just like saying stuff, and he's like, and we were next to like a repair yard, and so I was like, "Go to the repair yard. Maybe they'll repair your tire for you." He's like, No, we tried, and they're not doing anything." And I was like, "If I give you any money, what are you going to do with it anyway? And you probably need a couple $100 for this." And he's like, "Well, at least we could get something to eat." I was like, "Touche, khalas." And I was like, "Okay, I'll be right back," because I don't carry cash because I'm an American person. So I went to the closest ATM, and he like totally knew that I was going to come back. It's like he's done this before. So I go back. I go to the ATM. I pull out some money. I'm like, I give him a couple dollars for him to eat for a few days, masalan, him and his family. And he had his cat, which he told me about, so that's very important. And so I went back, I gave him the money, he said, "Thank you, Father," and I was like so proud of myself because I did something good. I'm like driving, and I go pick up my wife, and we go back down the street to go, I think we were getting ice cream or something. And so I'm like looking for the car because Taban, he didn't move, and the car's gone. It was probably a scam. I don't want to like blame anybody for anything, but probably just a scam. And I was like, so mad. I can say, does nobody have any them anymore? And, Jasmine, my wife, who's, you know, are you guys married? Yeah, nobody here is married. Like sometimes like the other person, and they're supposed to do this, I guess, is to like, you know, be the yin to your yang, and like she's never like, you're right, I'm mad at them too. Like she would never say that. Like she would never be like, Enta sah ya bun. You know, she's like, well, what are you doing it for? You're giving it to that, like you're not supposed to care what they do with it. I'm like, do you ever like back me up for anything? Like, do you ever like help? But she's so right? Like, what do I care what happens to it? Like, we're just supposed to give. Christ said the words, give whoever asks of you. Give to whoever asks of you. Not give to whoever asks of you, but make sure that they're not taking drugs or alcohol or going to use it for, you know, drugs or nothing. There's no conditions to your giving. Like, you're supposed to be asked and you give. That's what you're supposed to do. But I was like so angry. Like, I felt like they had taken something from me. The akle ayeli in the future, like this is their money that they're going to have. Like, you're not stealing from me, you're stealing from my kids. The devil starts to like, you know, give you ideas about how to feel about something. And then, so thinking about now the parable of the unjust steward, when I realized that like none of this money is even mine, like literally this money isn't even mine, because like it's probably like my father-in-law's money actually. So like it's not even our money, right? Like in the like the worldly sense, it's not even my money. But even in the spiritual sense, it's not mine. It's not mine. If it was like my salary, it's my salary for doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I literally have to wake up in the morning and go to church, and everybody thinks I'm doing a great job. And so it's not even mine. It's not even mine. So for me to give it away, or for me to feel like it's been taken away, it's not mine. So if we start to have this idea about our lives, where our money, our knowledge, our time, our physical, like helping someone carry something, if we think about that, saying that none of this is mine anyway, so I'm going to make use of it. I'm going to make use of it so that it lasts past my death. It lasts farther than that. When I get someone a cup of water, so if someone asks you for a cup of water and you're like, are you serious? Like, you're even closer to the fridge than I am. Why would I go get it? And you think it goes through your head. Like, parents do that a lot. Like, there's always a story of like parents that call their kids from upstairs to change the channel or get them the remote or something. Like, we always feel like we've been like cheated out of our time, out of our you know, physicality, out of our brain. If you think about it now, that this is not yours, and every single thing that you do is remembered. So a cup of water in my name will not be forgotten. And it becomes almost like a game where like I have to make up for all the lost time. I've been acting like this money is mine, or this knowledge is mine, or this stuff is mine, or these muscles are mine, or this brain is mine. And it's not. I could use it for so much more. So think about that as you're going through your life from now on. Not necessarily that you should give away all your money, but why not? But in all seriousness, it's not yours. It's not yours. So use it wisely. Use it wisely while you're here. Like someone we were talking about cars on the way up, and someone that's like impulsive would like see a car that he wants that's like way too expensive and just buy it, right? And then someone else would go up to him and be like, you are just an impulsive, silly man. Why would you do that? You should have saved up and saved it for something else, something that lasts more, something that's more valuable. And then most people would look at that person and be like, oh, that person's wise. He knows what he's talking about. We have to do that also with our spiritual lives. Making time for things for the future. Time, mind, money, strength, physicality, anything that you can give for the future. So you do it out of love. Like if I would have done the right thing and gave that person the money out of love and said, I don't even, like, it's not like because I think that you, just because you asked, and I give it to him, and I leave, and I never think about it again. It's out of love. And he takes the money, does whatever he wants with it. I get something bigger in heaven. Because when I go up to heaven, God's going to say, on such and such date, you did this. I'm going to say, God, I don't even remember that I did that. And not only that, God's going to say, on such and such date, you gave me whatever it was, $20. And I'd be like, what are you talking about? No, I didn't. He'd be like, no, you gave me $20 on such and such date. And I wouldn't even remember what happened. But God, and Christ said this before, he says it when like you do it to the least of my brethren, you do it to me. So it's as if you're doing it to Christ himself, first of all. And second of all, You won't even remember the things, but God remembers. God remembers the things that you do, the time that you spent. So when someone calls you and says, can you come help me move? And you say, like, seriously, I finally have a day off and I have, and you do it and it's fun and he buys you a drink or whatever and you're happy after. But those things are remembered. They're remembered by the person, but he might forget if you do something to him later that he doesn't like. But God never forgets. It always lasts. This time that you spent is always remembered. The money that you give to others is always remembered. The help that you give to someone that needs it is always remembered by God. The person themselves might forget, but God never forgets. So I would encourage you to be like the unjust steward, not in the sense that you would, waste away your talents, because that's what got him in trouble in the first place, is that he was wasting away his master's money or his master's things. That's what really was the problem. So you have a lot. All of us have been given something specifically, and more than we could ever imagine. We can sit around and waste it, or use it for ourselves, selfishly, or we could not waste it and use it for something good, and do good things with it, and spend money on people, and spend time for people, and always smile and give people like the generosity of Christ that's within us. That could make us something bigger, something better, something to be remembered for. Because people get rich all the time and no one's going to, like Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban, I don't want to pick on the man, but I'm sure it's almost like he got rich by accident almost. Like it just kind of like happened. I don't want to say anything. He probably did a lot of good work, but so we think of Mark Cuban as, this guy's so amazing, he's the best, he's a billionaire. There's people that hate him because he's a billionaire. There's people that love him and idolize him because he's a billionaire. But in the end, but he's going to die eventually. And then it's all gone. And then he's just like anybody else. And so you guys, I'm sure, are very talented and are going to make a lot of money and are going to have big families. You're not talented. I'm sure you guys all are. But eventually, it's going to be gone and you'll have nothing. And you'll be standing in front of the throne of God. You can't pay him off. And you can't be like, but I'm a doctor. Maybe, God, does your knee hurt or something? Like, I can help you. It's too late. There's nothing you can do. Everything that you've been given has been given from him. There's no favors. There's no, like, can I drive you around for a little bit? I'll clean your house for you. He doesn't need anything. So remember that in the things that you do from now on. I'm not trying to scare you into submission to give me all your money, which I will not reject, because, but what I'm trying to instill is this idea that what we have is not ours. Be wise in what you do. Use the stuff that you have control over that's not yours and give it away for the sake of your own future life. You guys have any questions? You don't actually have to have any questions. You can just, so there's nothing. Do you guys did you understand the parable now? It's an interesting parable. It's in the parable itself. It says, Christ says, give away your unrighteous mammon, and then I think Ambashnuda once spoke about it, and he said, like, all mammon is unrighteous. All the money that we have does no good. Does no good. Make friends for yourselves through unrighteous mammon. Give to others. Give to others, and that stuff lasts forever. The most valuable thing that we have is time, if you guys didn't know. So giving your time is something that's also lasts forever, is never forgotten. Yalla, glory be to God. Did you have something to say?
Where do you draw the line between giving all my possessions and, just being like Saint Anthony, or, no, maybe I was put on this earth to keep this? I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's hard.
Where do you draw that balance?
Look,
how do you figure that out?
The fact of the matter is, this is the way I think. You either have a balance or you have nothing. Most people aren't giving away 15% of their, most people, unfortunately, I'm going to group myself into your generation so as not to offend you, but our generation doesn't even tithe anymore. We forget about that. We've already, the older generations, my parents, when I first got a paycheck, we had a big, no, it's mine. I finally made some money. No, it has to go to the church. First paycheck has to go. No, but I made this. I'm just kidding. I gave it away. I'm better than that. But a little bit. But in all seriousness, like we don't give anything. Aslan. Let's not jump to like giving away everything. Let's do little by little. If tomorrow you give more than you've already given before, it's a step in the right direction. The key though, and this is very important, Christ said this himself, is we don't want to do it like show. Now people that give checks to charity, they even made bigger checks so it could be like more impactful, so that you could see the amount, and you don't want to like put the small check in front of the camera. They won't be able to see it. They big huge checks, which is fine for them, whatever floats your boat. But we as Christians are supposed to be giving without anybody knowing, and you wouldn't even have me know as a father confession lesson. Like you would just, no one should know, and that's the most impactful way to give. So the person also shouldn't necessarily know that they're getting it. And that's how you can be creative, by use your creative juices to figure out a way that you can give without anybody knowing. If someone asks from you, you give them, well, khalas, you're just going to give them in front of their face. But so there's other ways to give. There's ways to give your time. There was a father, he was a pope. I want to say Guirges, but probably not. And he was struggling with a sin, and he started cleaning the bathrooms of the patriarchate, like at night, without anybody knowing, so as to kind of have favor before God to help him with this thing that he was struggling with, this thing that he wanted to do. So everybody does it, St. Moses the Strong, we just had his a couple of weeks ago. He used to stay up all night and go and get the water pots for all the monks and fill them for them and put them back on their thing without anybody knowing. So many examples of saints doing things without anybody knowing. And I was thinking also, like, the idea is that no one knows, so there's so many more things that so many people have done throughout the history of the world that no one even knows about because no one ever knew. Those are the things that I consider like written in the book of life. Like when they open up your chapter of the book of life, all the things that you did hidden, no one knew about, those are what's in there for between you and God. But basically my answer is like no one's giving away everything they have, and no one's giving away anything. So like let's start as on a personal mission to start giving something. If you don't have money or you feel like your money's just enough for you, fine, it's between you and God, then use your time. But if you have some money that you're willing to give up, then give it. Give a little bit. Even $1 a day. It doesn't have to be much. But what it does have to be is this idea that I'm starting to give. I'm starting to do something. I'm starting to make up for lost time. It's important. We all have to have this feeling within ourselves. We can't just hear about the parable and just move on. Then it would be shameful. It increases our faith too, because if you really believe that God is going to repay you someday for this, then it doesn't hurt. You give it like it's like nothing, right? Because you feel like I'm going to get something even better in the future. And then it gets to the point where you don't think about what you're going to get. You just feel good doing it because that's what Christ said to do. You feel like you're giving it to him personally because you are. That's how he said it. So no, the balance is like give something. Like fine, you're not going to give everything. There's not a lot of people that have given up everything. But there's a lot of people that have given up something. But we don't want to be in the group that didn't give up anything. We just talked about it. We sat around and talked about it a lot. And we thought about it a lot, but we never actually did it. So like I said, if you don't have money, great. You still have time. Time, you still have your brain, you still have your hands, you still have your voice, your whatever God's gifts are. It's just so that you're not becoming the unjust steward that has wasted away his master's goods. We don't want to waste away the good things that we've had. Understand? You guys all come here to this church. This is